Sukhoi, greetings, I am Tad Larkin, the lore master of Manda-LORE, and today I'll be digging through the archives to elaborate on the legendary Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He claims to be the property of an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Is he a relative of yours? Do you know who he's talking about?
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
I think my uncle knows him. He said he was dead.
Oh, he's not dead. Not yet.
You know him?
Well, of course I know him. He's me.
Obi-Wan Kenobi was a Force-sensitive human male, possibly born on Coruscant 57 Galactic Standard years before the Battle of Yavin. While his homeworld is up for debate, with planets such as Stugin, Coruscant, and even Tatooine proposed as possible birthplaces by other galactic historians, we do know that he was born into a moderately wealthy family, and taken at infancy by the Jedi Order, as was done with many Jedi in his time. As a youngling in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Obi-Wan attended introductory courses taught by Grand Master Yoda in the basics of honing one's connection to the mystical energy field known as the Force, as well as rudimentary lightsaber combat styles and techniques. As the young Kenobi grew older, he was placed in a Jedi Initiate clan under the tutelage of Jedi Master Vant, and he would continue to learn from other instructors as well, such as Jedi Master Sin Dralig, who taught younglings the more refined techniques of handling a lightsaber. It was during one of Master Dralig's classes that he met a young human female named Siri Tachi, and the adolescent Kenobi found in her a rival. However, as their journey through Jedi training progressed, he began to develop a fondness for her, though it would be a year before he would work up the courage to converse with her. In 45 BBY, by the age of 12, Obi-Wan faced a dilemma. Jedi initiates who were not selected by masters or knights by the age of 13 to be their Padawan learners were deemed too inept to be full-fledged Jedi, and were assigned to work in one of the many non-combative Jedi service corps. Kenobi needed to impress and be noticeable fast. During one of the many lightsaber matches Dralig would host for the temple to show off his students, Kenobi found himself competing with another rival, Brook Chun, for the attention of the venerable Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, who was in the audience. Obi-Wan gave it his all, and while he eventually bested Chun and won the match, so furious were his attacks that, to Qui-Gon, he seemed too reckless to take on as a Padawan, especially when Qui-Gon had already lost one apprentice to the dark side of the Force. With that, Kenobi's worst fear was realized, and in 44 BBY, he was assigned to the Jedi Agricultural Corps, where he was doomed to plow the crop fields on the Outer Rim mining colony of Bandamir for seemingly the rest of his life. As fate would have it though, young Obi-Wan wouldn't remain in the Agri-Corps for much longer, as Qui-Gon Jinn arrived on Bandamir to mediate a supposed dispute between two rival companies, Off-World Mining Corp and the Arcona Mineral Harvest Corporation. However, the meeting was a setup. Jinn's former Padawan, Xanatos, had fallen to the dark side several years earlier, after his father arranged a hostile takeover of his homeworld Telos 4, and intended to rule as a tyrant, but was killed by Jinn, and ever since that day he swore vengeance upon his former master. With Obi-Wan's aid, Qui-Gon managed to thwart Xanatos' efforts, and although the Dark Jedi escaped, Obi-Wan demonstrated his worthiness to Qui-Gon, and he agreed to take him on as his Padawan learner. Though the Master and Apprentice duo got off to a rocky start, as time went on, their differences began to complement one another, and allowed them to act as an effective team. Qui-Gon's headstrong attitude and willingness to take risks was put in check by Obi-Wan's reserved nature and practical approaches to problem solving. Jinn and Kenobi spent the following months stopping a crime syndicate stranglehold on Findar, preventing election fraud on Gala, and Kenobi even briefly left the Jedi Order to fight in an ongoing civil war on Melita/Dan, a planet that was so divided that its inhabitants couldn't even agree on what to name it. However, his experiences helped him realize that his true home was with the Order, and was accepted back by Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan's return to Coruscant was met by an attack on the Jedi Temple, and an attempt on Master Yoda's life, with the culprit being none other than Xanatos, who had influenced Brooke Chun to be his inside man the entire time. The four ignited their lightsabers, and a duel commenced, eventually splitting into two separate duels. While Qui-Gon and Xanatos pursued one another to the High Council chamber, Obi-Wan and Brooke found themselves dueling in the Room of 1,000 Fountains, where Brooke lost his footing and, despite Obi-Wan's best efforts to save him, fell towards the jagged rocks to his death. Still reeling from the guilt of Brooke Chun's death, Obi-Wan accompanied his master to Telos IV in pursuit of Xanatos, and found that he had manipulated the planet's populace into revering him, and had taken control of the planetary government. Escaping captivity, Jin and Kenobi dueled Xanatos for the final time, and while they made it clear that they wanted to take him alive and hold him accountable for his crimes, Xanatos didn't let them have the pleasure, and leapt into a pool of acid. The Xanatos crisis was over, and Telos IV was freed from his grip. Shortly after their duel on Telos IV, Qui-Gon brought Obi-Wan to the temple on Ilum, at the edge of the unknown regions, where he cast aside the lightsaber given to him as a Jedi initiate and constructed a lightsaber of his own, selecting a blue Ilum crystal to focus his blade. On a mission to the Outer Rim world of Qui-Gon, Kenobi got to work closely with Siri Tachi and her master Adi Gallia in their efforts to topple a religious oligarchy's stranglehold over the world's populace, and it was there that they forged the beginnings of their friendship and blossoming feelings towards one another. That same year, he and his master accompanied Jedi Master Tyvaka, Jedi Master Plo Koon, Adi Gallia, and Senator Finis Valorum to the Outer Rim world of Troikan to mediate talks between the Trade Federation and Ayako Stark of the Stark Commercial Combine over his organization raiding Trade Federation shipments of Bacta during a shortage of the miracle medical substance. The talks quickly deteriorated, and Master Tyvaka was killed in the ensuing firefight, but with the arrival of Republic judicial forces under Senator-turned-Captain Ranulph Tarkin, the situation became a full-fledged battle that eventually resulted in Stark himself surrendering to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. During that time, which would later become known as the Stark Hyperspace Conflict, Obi-Wan met with another Padawan his own age, Quinlan Vos, and he and the Cathar hit it off and would look forward to subsequent missions their masters were placed together on. In 43 BBY, Obi-Wan, with his master, stopped a civil war from erupting in the Rutan system, brought down the fearsome bounty hunter Ona Nabis with Siri Tachi and Adi Gallia on Belasco, and saved Qui-Gon from being the subject of one of the mad scientist Janazan Arbor's experiments. By 41 BBY, Obi-Wan found himself accompanying his master during one of his maverick moments of not listening to the Jedi Council, and following a vision he had of Jedi Master Tal's death, who Qui-Gon was rather infatuated with despite his devotion to the Jedi Code, and this led them to the mid-rim world of New Absalon, where Tal was indeed dying. Obi-Wan assisted his master in tracking down Tal's killer, and Qui-Gon nearly struck him down before remembering he was a Jedi, sworn to the light side of the Force, and watching his master skirt the edge of the dark side caused Obi-Wan to rethink his own attachments and gain a better understanding of the Jedi Council's stance against attachment itself. Just as well, in 38 BBY, while on a mission with Siri and her master to the Outer Rim world of Cirrus to protect a 10-year-old Taliesin Fry from a gang of bounty hunters, he and Siri broke off their secret relationship. Though this was the end to their formal relationship, neither Obi-Wan nor Siri ever truly gave up their feelings for one another, and while they drifted apart as their Jedi duties sent them to opposite corners of the galaxy over the years, their love for one another remained. In the subsequent years between 41 and 33 BBY, Obi-Wan and his master guarded a key witness in a murder trial on her journey from her home world of Frego to Coruscant, mediated civil strife on Vorzid IV, tracked down and captured an academic seeking to find a long-lost Sith holocron, investigated the disappearance of a luxury cruise liner, the Orient Express, and helped a Wookiee colony establish itself on the moon of Alaris Prime in the Kashyyyk system, while being harassed by the Trade Federation. In 33 BBY, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were sent to the hostile world of Yinchor as part of a Jedi strike team led by Jedi Master Mace Windu to force the aggressive Yinchori to cease hostilities with their neighboring star systems, and together they survived the ensuing bloodbath until Republic judicial forces could be marshaled to provide aid and blockade the Yinchori system. A year later, in 32 BBY, after the Galactic Senate passed a bill commencing the taxation of the once free trade routes in the Outer and Mid-Rim, the Trade Federation, in retaliation, blockaded the pristine world of Naboo, home world of Senator Palpatine, who had initially proposed the legislation. In response, the now Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum sent Obi-Wan on a mission that would change his life forever, as he and Qui-Gon boarded the Counselor-class cruiser Radiant 7 bound for Naboo, where they would negotiate with the Trade Federation to stop their illegal blockade of the planet. As Qui-Gon Jinn expected and even told Obi-Wan, the negotiations were short. Knowing full well that the blockade was illegal and with no intention of disbanding, Viceroy Newt Gunray ordered the conference room filled with dioxis gas, and the Radiant 7 was blown up with turbolaser fire within his flagship's hangar. The Jedi managed to escape and stowed away on board C-9979 transports carrying the battle droid forces of the Trade Federation intending to spearhead a ground invasion of the planet. And once groundside, the Master and Padawan regrouped and evaded droid patrols with the aid of a clumsy Gungan, Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar guided them to the underwater city of Atoa Gunga, where they secured a transport to the capital city of Theed. They arrived just as Queen Amidala, her handmaidens, and security team were being rounded up by battle droids after refusing to sign Gunray's treaty making his invasion and blockade legal, and after dispatching their automated captors, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan escorted them to the royal hangar, where they freed more RNSF personnel and escaped on board the royal starship. While attempting to run the blockade, the starship's hyperdrive was badly damaged, but thanks to the efforts of the astromech droid designated R2-D2, they were able to repair their power core mid-battle, and had enough power to limp to the arid world of Tatooine in the Outer Rim. Obi-Wan remained on the ship with Captain Panaka and the other RNSF personnel, while Qui-Gon and one of the Queen's handmaidens, Padme, journeyed to the nearby settlement of Mos Espa to find replacement parts to the hyperdrive, but instead found a 9-year-old slave boy, Anakin Skywalker, with a technological gift and an off-the-chart midichlorian count. Utilizing Anakin's skill at the dangerous motorsport of pod racing, Qui-Gon was able to win the parts needed to repair the hyperdrive, as well as Anakin's freedom, and despite Obi-Wan's reservations, Qui-Gon intended to take the boy back with them to the Jedi Temple. However, before they made it back to the ship and loaded the hyperdrive, Qui-Gon was ambushed by a mysterious Iridonian Zabrak, strong in the dark side of the Force. Obi-Wan had the ship lift off and pulled his master and Anakin on board to safety, while leaving the Zabrak in the dust. The assailant to them felt more malevolent than any dark Jedi they had previously encountered, and when the realization that they were dealing with one of the long-thought extinct Sith Lords surpassed, young Anakin was formally introduced to Obi-Wan. Returning to Coruscant after making the necessary repairs yielded little results. Despite the Queen's pleas, the Galactic Senate did nothing to hold the Trade Federation accountable, or aid her suffering world. Meanwhile, the Jedi brought Anakin before the Jedi Council, and while he showed great strength in the Force, the Council forbade Qui-Gon from training Anakin, so he would train him informally. At the Queen's behest, they all returned to Naboo, where, after securing the Gungans' help, they met with the remnants of the RNSF as well as other resistance movements, and hatched a plan to take the planet back from the Trade Federation. While the Gungans staged a diversionary land battle, the Queen and her party, escorted by the two Jedi, moved to retake Theed, and they got as far as the Royal Hangar when the Sith they encountered on Tatooine, later revealed to be Darth Maul, made an appearance, and the Jedi engaged him to give the pilots a chance to get to their N1 starfighters. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Maul clashed sabers among the numerous platforms of the adjacent plasma refinery complex, but as fate would have it, Obi-Wan was separated from his master, and from behind an oscillating ray shield, he watched helplessly as Maul ran his saber through Qui-Gon's chest. As soon as the ray shield completed its cycle, Obi-Wan charged at Maul with determination, but soon found himself clinging for his life at the edge of a deactivated reactor shaft as his lightsaber fell below him, and, using the Force, he called Qui-Gon's lightsaber to his hand after Force jumping out of the shaft, catching Maul by surprise and bisecting the Sith Lord. Obi-Wan held his master close until his last breath, promising Qui-Gon that he would fulfill his last wish and train young Anakin Skywalker, whom he believed to be the prophesied Chosen One, as a Jedi. Following the successful take-back of Naboo, Obi-Wan finally achieved Jedi knighthood, and while the Council still disagreed with Qui-Gon about Anakin being the Chosen One, they did agree to make a special case for the boy and allow him to be trained as Obi-Wan's Padawan. In many ways, Anakin reminded him a bit of Qui-Gon. However, in other ways, he was so frustratingly unlike Qui-Gon that Obi-Wan had to reteach himself patience at times. Anakin was reckless, compulsive, and preferred tinkering with droids in his spare time than minding his actual studies. 3 standard years after the Naboo crisis in 29 BBY, Obi-Wan and his new apprentice received one of their first assignments. They were to journey to the world of Sonoma Sekot in the Outer Rim to investigate the disappearance of the Fosh Jedi Knight Vergere. They arrived under the false pretense of 2 spacers seeking to commission one of Sonoma Sekot's famous living ships, which were constructed using organic materials from the living planet and tailored to the pilot's needs through a symbiotic relationship with organisms known as seed partners. During their investigation, Sonoma Sekot revealed to the Jedi that not only was it a living world, but it was indeed a sentient one, and informed them that the Jedi they sought had been taken by a scouting party of extragalactic beings known as the Far Outsiders. The mission was cut short when a fleet of turned-over Trade Federation ships led by Lieutenant Governor of Iriadu, Willof Tarkin, and owner of Sinar Fleet Systems, Wraith Sinar, arrived in orbit of Sonoma Sekot, with the intention of capturing the world to hopefully militarize it. Obi-Wan and Anakin aided the settlers as well as Sonoma itself in defending the world from this new threat, escaping Tarkin's captivity in their organically grown starship Jabatha. The planet itself soon retreated into hyperspace and relocated itself, not to be found again for several decades. During the battle, Anakin exhibited the first in a long line of disturbing fits of rage, when he used the Force to burn alive one of Tarkin's agents from the inside out. This feat was a cause of great concern. Obi-Wan will have his hands full with Skywalker, there was no doubt. Between 29 and 27 BBY, Obi-Wan and Anakin recovered the holocron of the ancient Sith King Adas on Kodai, brought down a slaver operation on Nar Shaddaa led by Crayon, who was the one that had enslaved Anakin and his mother and sold them to Gardola the Hutt, and aided evacuation efforts on Radnor after a supposedly accidental release of a dangerous toxin. In 27 BBY, Obi-Wan and Anakin were assigned by Mace Windu to join the Outbound Flight project, an expedition of Jedi and colonists to attempt to explore the unknown regions and eventually one of the satellite galaxies in orbit around the main one. They were to keep a close watch on the project leader, Jedi Master Joruus C'baoth, who was increasingly at odds with the Jedi Council over the project, and Kenobi even had to intervene when C'baoth attempted to abduct the Force-sensitive children of the colonists without their parents' consent. Luckily for Kenobi and Skywalker, they didn't stay with the project until the end, and were diverted by Chancellor Palpatine before Outbound Flight even left known space, as he had planned, or rather Darth Sidious had planned, to have the ship and all its passengers taken out for fear it would prompt an invasion by the far outsiders. On a subsequent mission to Ragoon 6, Obi-Wan and his apprentice made an unsettling discovery. Xanatos, who Kenobi had vanquished with his master years earlier, had a son, Granta Omega, and he was following in his father's footsteps of trying to gain political power through acquisition of companies and get revenge on Kenobi for his father's death. After a mission to the core world of Andara with Ciri and her Padawan Ferrus Olin, Anakin and Obi-Wan accompanied Master Yoda and Master Yaddle to mitigate a dispute on Mawan, which ended up being a trap set by Granta Omega, but with Yaddle's selfless sacrifice, the citizens of the city of Natan were saved from Omega's chemical weapon. Anakin's selfish actions and behavior on the last two missions began to cause a rift between Obi-Wan and his apprentice. However, on a subsequent mission to Vanquor to find Jenna Zan Arbor, who was now working with Granta Omega, Anakin rescued his master from a nest of Gundarks, before being taken prisoner by Zan Arbor and then rescued by Ciri and Ferrus. Obi-Wan and Anakin pursued Zan Arbor and Omega over the years to Ramen, Faline, foiled their plot to assassinate Palpatine as well as the rest of the Senate on Coruscant, before finally tracking them to Korriban, where the Jedi Strike Team led by Kenobi finally cornered Omega in 23 BBY, and while Kenobi made the difficult choice to end Omega's life, Zan Arbor managed to escape. From 24 to 22 BBY, Kenobi and Skywalker were increasingly assigned more missions to keep Republic member planets and systems from seceding to the newly formed Confederacy of Independent Systems, in the wake of the galaxy-wide strife that had been building up over the centuries. One such mission was to the mid-rim world of Ancion, where he, Anakin, Jedi Master Luminara Unduli, and her Padawan, Barriss Offee, mitigated a border dispute between the settlers and Ancion's main cities and the nomadic Alawari tribe of native Ancionians. Despite interference from the Commerce Guild, the Jedi reassured Ancion's membership within the Republic. Their return to Coruscant was met with an assassination attempt on now Senator Padme Amidala's life, just prior to a Senate vote on the controversial Military Creation Act. Obi-Wan and Anakin's new task was to guard Senator Amidala while the investigation was underway, and another attempt on her life, this time in her own Coruscant apartment, led the Jedi on a speeder chase through Coruscant's skylines. The Jedi caught up with the would-be assassin, a Claudite bounty hunter named Zam Wesell, at the Outlander Club, but before she could reveal who her contact was, the changeling was shot with a toxic dart and died on the spot. With this new revelation came a new assignment. Anakin would lay low with Padme in the Lake Country on Naboo, while Obi-Wan continued the investigation. And while taking the dart to the Temple Archive analysis droids gave him nothing to go on, his galaxy-wise friend and restaurateur, Dexter Jetster, was able to discern that the dart came from the Outer Rim world called Kamino, near Sub Terrell and Rishi. More perusing through the archives got Kenobi nowhere, and finally, after turning to Master Yoda for help, the conclusion came to that Kamino had been erased from the Jedi archives, but indeed still existed. So, Obi-Wan traveled to the area on the star charts where Kamino should have been, and sure enough, he found it. Upon landing on the rain-soaked water world, he not only found his prime suspect, the Mandalorian bounty hunter Jango Fett, but also an entire army of clones of the aforementioned Fett, supposedly bred and trained to fight for the Republic. That he would get into later. First, he needed to talk with Jango. Fett knew the jig was up and attempted to shake Kenobi on the Kamino landing platform. However, Obi-Wan was clever enough to place a tracking device on the Slave One's hull, and tracked the bounty hunter's ship to the arid ringed world of Geonosis. After dogfighting with Fett through the asteroid fields, Kenobi managed to shake him and landed on the planet, only to find a large concentration of Trade Federation, Techno-Union, and Commerce Guild ships and droid foundries, and upon further snooping, he witnessed the signing of an arms agreement between these organizations and Count Dooku, former Jedi and leader of the CIS. Before Obi-Wan was captured by the nefarious Dooku, he relayed his findings to Anakin, who in turn relayed them to Coruscant, and while Anakin and Padme attempted to rescue him themselves from captivity, the Jedi gathered their strength as well as their new clone army and made haste to Geonosis. Whilst in captivity, Dooku, who had been Qui-Gon's master in his day, attempted to sway Obi-Wan to his side, even revealing the presence of a second Sith, Darth Sidious, who was said to have immense influence over the Galactic Senate, right under the Jedi's noses. However, Obi-Wan would rather die than serve Dooku. Before his, Anakin's, and Padme's scheduled execution in the Petranaki Arena, 200 Jedi and later 200,000 clones descended upon Geonosis and kicked off the first battle of what would become the Clone Wars. While the clone troopers of the newly dubbed Grand Army of the Republic slugged it out with the battle droid forces of the CIS, Obi-Wan and Anakin chased after the Count, finally confronting him with lightsabers ablaze. However, Anakin's recklessness cost him his right arm, as well as a few minor injuries for Obi-Wan. Even with Yoda intervening, Dooku had escaped. In the aftermath of the Battle of Geonosis, Obi-Wan, like most Jedi Knights, was given a general's commission in the GAR, and his Padawan the rank of commander. In the first month of the war, General Kenobi and Commander Skywalker, leading elements of what would later become the Third Systems Army, had gotten word that Dooku was trying to unearth an ancient Sith weapon, the Dark Reaper, and engaged his forces at Renvar, Roxas Prime, Alaris Prime, and finally Thule, where Anakin was able to destroy the weapon's power source, rendering it useless. When the CIS made a daring attack on the cloning facilities on Kamino, Kenobi and Skywalker were among several Jedi chosen to defend it, and with the help of Alpha 17 as well as the other advanced recon clone troopers released from stasis, Kamino was valiantly held. Not long after Kamino, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Alpha were accompanied by Jedi Master Glaive and his Padawan, Zul Zis, to investigate the poisoning of a Gungan colony on Naboo's moon, Oma-Ta'un, and there, they had their first meeting with the Ratatakai Dark Jedi Acolyte Asajj Ventress and the Jedi bounty hunter Dirge. Though Glaive was killed and the Separatists were successful, they did manage to find that the chemical agent used to poison the colony, codenamed swamp gas, was developed by one of their old nemeses, Jenna Zan Arbor, on the molten planet of Queta. Leaving his Padawan behind for this one, Obi-Wan joined 4 other Jedi Masters in infiltrating Zan Arbor's complex on Queta, seeking the swamp gas antidote. However, they were ambushed by Ventress and Dirge, who, after brutally slaughtering the other 4 Jedi Masters, mockingly allowed Obi-Wan to live. Little did they know, he had recovered the antidote. 4 months after the Battle of Geonosis, Kenobi and his forces were given the task of assaulting a major CIS financial asset, the banking clan homeworld of Munilinst, and while Anakin commanded the space forces, Obi-Wan led ground troops against the capital city, Harnadain, all while ARC troopers under the command of Captain Alpha 77, Fordo, conducted special ops behind enemy lines. After brawling with Dirge, who commanded the CIS forces, thanks to Fordo and his team knocking out Harnadain's defenses, Obi-Wan was able to assault the enemy HQ, not before the regenerating mass that made up Dirge returned for round 2, but he was again bested by Kenobi. Though the ground battle was won and the space forces were mopping up, Obi-Wan's reckless Padawan was lured into a dogfight with Asajj Ventress, and after ignoring his master's commands to disengage, Anakin trailed her to Yavin 4, where they dueled. Needless to say, he returned to a verbal thrashing by Obi-Wan. 1 year after Geonosis, Obi-Wan teamed up with the Nautolan Jedi Kit Fisto in a mission to the Outer Rim world of Ort Cestus, where the CIS were in talks to place an order for JKA series biodroids, capable of killing Jedi. Kenobi and Fisto worked against Ventress and attempted to raise a planetary militia to create an uprising against Cestus cybernetics, but when all else failed, it was the selfless sacrifice of one ARC captain that sabotaged the manufacturing control center. After the battle, Kenobi worked with the natives to restore their monarchy in the wake of Cestus cybernetics' collapse. 2 months later, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Alpha 17 accompanied several other Jedi and their Padawans to aid Republic loyalists on the Outer Rim mudball of Jabim against the Separatist allied Alto Stratus, who had seized control over the world in a bloody coup. Kenobi and his forces spent several weeks battling Stratus's organic soldiers and Separatist droids alike, and during one engagement, he and Alpha hurried into an experimental AT-AT that was brought down in the fighting, and attempted to evacuate the survivors. However, the vehicle exploded, leaving Anakin and the others to think that he and Alpha were dead. They were far from it, as Asajj Ventress had pulled them from the rubble and taken them prisoner, transporting them back to her castle on Ratatak, where she tortured them in her dungeons for almost 2 months before they escaped. With the aid of one of her local political enemies, he and Alpha stole one of Ventress's Genovix fanblade starfighters and made a run for it, while her lackeys tailed them to the planet Riflor, where the two planned to make their last stand before Anakin and his new master, Ki-Adi-Mundi, came to the rescue. Anakin had not felt Obi-Wan's death in the Force, and had never doubted for a second that he was still alive and actively sought him out. The Master and Padawan were reunited, and the ARC Trooper returned to Kamino to train the next generation of clone commanders. Over the next several months, Obi-Wan and his Padawan battled the Sepset Verugency, Nivek, and Terrasul, the former of which battles earned young Anakin the moniker the Hero with No Fear. Obi-Wan's Padawan had come a long way from the selfish, obstinate youth that had tested him for many years. He could indeed see that Anakin was coming onto his own, yet he still had more trials to face in this war. 2 years and 5 months into the war, Obi-Wan and Anakin got to work with an old friend, Siri Tachi, as they were tasked to protect another old friend, Taliesin Fry, now grown up, who invented a code-breaking device that they sought for use against the Separatists. They made it as far as the embattled world of Azure when, in a final stand with a CIS-allied bounty hunter, Siri was gravely injured, and as Obi-Wan held her in his arms, they exchanged their feelings one last time, and just before she died, she told Obi-Wan that she'd be with him always. After dark thoughts of revenge, Obi-Wan vowed to never let himself love again. 1 month later, Obi-Wan and Anakin journeyed to the harsh world of Vajun, where Yoda had fallen into a trap set by Dooku, and the 2 Padawans that were accompanying him were being held in captivity by Ventress. Their arrival prompted both Dooku and Ventress to flee. In the over 2 years of war and 37 years of service to the Jedi Order, Obi-Wan came out on top in any and every challenge thrown at him. He trusted in himself and in the Force, and for this, the Jedi Council saw fit to elevate him to the rank of Master, as well as offer him a seat on the Jedi Council. In one of his first Jedi Council meetings, Obi-Wan put forth that his apprentice, Anakin, should be finally given the rank of Jedi Knight, arguing that though he didn't face the formal trials, the challenges he faced during the war had made him stronger and more mature. The Council reluctantly agreed. Not long after, Obi-Wan broke off his current assignment at Rendili to investigate a Jedi distress signal coming from a derelict zoological research vessel, and there he found his childhood friend Quinlan Vos, who, last he heard, had fallen to the dark side of the Force and defected to the Confederacy. Vos explained that he was working as a double agent to get as close as he could to Dooku and find the rumored second Sith, and he was currently on the run from Ventress, who paid them a visit, riding an escaped Rancor like the Dathomir witches of old. After giving Ventress the slip, they returned to Rendili where Vos gave himself up, not before aiding Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Saesee Tiin in a rescue mission for Plo Koon and Captain Jan Dodonna, simultaneously fighting off CIS forces that arrived in system to support the would-be Rendili defectors. Koon and Dodonna were rescued, and Rendili remained in the Republic. Along with his new rank within the Order, Obi-Wan also received a military promotion. He was now Jedi High General, in command of the entire 3rd Systems Army under Clone Marshal Commander CC-2224, Cody, and he was also attached to the Open Circle Armada. Kenobi's promotion was just in time for a massive Republic offensive that pushed the Separatists out of the core, inner rim, and mid-rim, and kept them isolated in the outer rim, marking the beginning of the Outer Rim sieges, during which Kenobi and his forces participated in many battles, most notably Bombas-Cori IV and Sarish. Obi-Wan had learned a lot about Ventress during his captivity on Ratatak, and despite spending the entire war trying to kill him, he endeavored to bring her back to the light side of the Force, and even though Anakin claimed that he had killed her on Coruscant shortly after the Battle of Rendili, he went on an almost obsessive search for her. His search led the former Master and Padawan duo to Trigalis, and then Maramir, where they were ambushed by Dirge, and after defeating the Jedi seemingly once and for all, they were rescued by Alderaanian Senator Bail Organa on the RAS intervention. On nearby Boz-Pity, it was discovered that the entire Separatist High Command, including both Dooku and General Grievous, had convened on the Graveyard World, and the RAS intervention was en route to make a daring, all-or-nothing assault. They were joined by several prominent Jedi Masters including Mace Windu, Asherad Het, Plo Koon, and even their old ARC friend, Alpha, and luckily for them, intervention made it past the CIS fleet before it made a controlled crash on Boz-Pity's surface, where its complement of clones and Jedi assaulted the base. Ventress was there as well, recovering from her wounds, and was set loose upon her old nemesis. And during the ensuing duel, Obi-Wan tried to talk Ventress down and convince her to let go of her hate, but he was ultimately forced to gravely injure her. Whether there was indeed some good left in her, or that she simply hated Dooku more than him for abandoning her while he escaped, the last words she uttered to Kenobi was to defend Coruscant at all costs. Obi-Wan requested her body be sent back to Coruscant for a proper Jedi funeral. However, she never arrived there, nor was she ever seen again. 2 years and 11 months after Geonosis, Generals Kenobi and Skywalker were assaulting the Neimoidia system, and during the Battle of Cato Neimoidia, they infiltrated Trade Federation Viceroy Newt Gunray's personal villa in the countryside, and while the Viceroy escaped, he left behind something of utmost importance, his Mechno chair. Republic engineers discovered that not only were they able to intercept super-encrypted messages from the CIS Supreme Commander, General Grievous, but they also discovered recorded conversations with a mysterious hooded figure, who it was believed was the rumored second Sith, Darth Sidious. After using an intercepted transmission to lay a trap for General Grievous at Belderone, Kenobi and Skywalker turned their efforts to tracing the history of the Mechno chair to hopefully track down Sidious, but their investigations at Charos 4, Escart, and Naos 3 were cut short when they received an urgent update that Count Dooku and Grievous were on Tithe. Obi-Wan and Anakin quickly rejoined their fleet and jumped for the Tithe system. However, when they got there, the CIS fleet was smaller than anticipated, and Grievous's flagship was nowhere in sight. However, Dooku was present during the ground battle, escaping just before they could reach him. In 19 BBY, following the Battle of Tithe, Obi-Wan and Anakin received another urgent message from Palpatine and Mace Windu. General Grievous had been spotted going to and from the nearby planet of Nelvon, so they made haste there, only to find no immediate CIS presence. They were captured by the native Nelvanians, but after it was realized that Anakin resembled a local folk hero, their mission prerogative changed, and they were tasked with investigating the disappearance of all the tribe's males, but Kenobi wouldn't accompany his former Padawan, stating that this would be his final trial.
What are you doing?
No, it's what you're doing.
After Anakin uncovered and foiled a secret Techno-Union plot to biomechanically engineer the Nelvanians, they were soon bombarded with messages. Coruscant was under siege, and their fleet was urgently needed. Upon arrival in system, the Jedi Dream Team hopped into their Jedi Interceptors and braved waves of Vulture droids and Tri-Fighters to make it to General Grievous's flagship, where they located the captive Supreme Chancellor and dueled Count Dooku to the death, though Obi-Wan was knocked unconscious by the Sith Lord. Coming to as Anakin was carrying both him and the Chancellor in an effort to make it to the hangar bay, Obi-Wan and company soon found themselves captured and brought to the bridge, where, after a prompt distraction from R2-D2, they dueled Grievous's Magna Guards as he made his escape. The already battered Providence-class destroyer began listing towards the planet's surface, and both Obi-Wan and Anakin made sure to provide the Chancellor with another happy landing, as they managed to bring in at least half of the ship. During their sojourn from the war back at the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan began to notice his former apprentice was growing distant and reverting back to old habits, becoming irritable and prone to outbursts, most notably when he was given the great honor to be granted a Jedi Council seat but was not elevated to the rank of Master. His growing close with the Supreme Chancellor was also worrisome, as Obi-Wan didn't trust politicians. With Count Dooku dead, the key to ending the war was the destruction of General Grievous, and when clone intelligence units found Grievous hiding on the outer rim world of Utapau, Obi-Wan was chosen by the Council to root him out, so he made ready Cody and the 212th Attack Battalion. Assembling an army large enough to capture 3 star systems, General Kenobi made landfall first, so he could take Grievous by surprise, and that he did, dueling the cyborg general throughout Pao City, until, after finally exposing his organ sac, he fired his own blaster at the general, cooking him from the inside out. The Supreme Commander of the CIS droid armies was no more, and Cody reported this to High Command.
So uncivilized.
Obi-Wan soon rejoined his troops to lead the mop-up operation, but it wasn't long before Commander Cody received an ultra-priority transmission from the Chancellor himself, enacting Contingency Order 66, which stated that the Jedi were acting against the interests of the Republic and were to be removed by force. Miraculously, Obi-Wan survived being fired upon by his own troops, and after stealing Grievous's personal starfighter, he was contacted by and rendezvoused with Bail Organa and Yoda, who had escaped his own troops firing on him during the Battle of Kashyyyk. Organa helped smuggle the 2 Jedi Masters to Coruscant when he was recalled for a special congress, and there they fought their way past clone patrols to investigate the smoldering Jedi Temple, which they discovered had been attacked by none other than Anakin and the 501st Legion. Sifting through the security recordings, they found that not only had Anakin fallen to the dark side and pledged himself to Darth Sidious, aka Palpatine, who dubbed him Darth Vader, but also that he had been secretly married to Padme. At Padme's apartment, he broke the news to her, and she revealed to him that she was also carrying Anakin's child, but she refused to believe this upsetting news and traveled to Mustafar, where Anakin was sent to wipe out the rest of the Separatist leadership. In the midst of her pleas to her husband, Obi-Wan, who had stowed away on Padme's starship just before she left, walked down the boarding ramp and sent Anakin into a fit of rage, where he nearly killed his pregnant wife. Arguing with his former Padawan to let her go and come to his senses, Obi-Wan finally realized that only a Sith deals in absolutes, and drew his lightsaber. Anakin drew his in return, and amongst the lava fields of Mustafar, 2 brothers dueled to the end. Their saber clash through and on the various equipment and structures of the Mustafar mining complex eventually led them to the edge of a lava river, where, despite Obi-Wan possessing the high ground advantage, Anakin pressed his attack, only to have Kenobi cut off his remaining arm and both of his legs. His former student and friend was beyond redemption. He was as a brother to him, but no more. Obi-Wan collected Anakin's lightsaber as he seemingly burnt to death in the molten hellscape, and he quickly rushed to aid Padme. Reconvening on Polis Massa with Yoda and Organa, Obi-Wan begged Padme to hold on, as she gave birth to not one as previously thought, but 2 children. Luke and Leia she named them before she passed on. An agreement was made that both Obi-Wan and Yoda would go into exile, and while Leia went with Bail and his wife Queen Briha Organa of Alderaan, Luke was taken back to Anakin's stepbrother, Owen Lars, and his wife Beru on Tatooine, where Obi-Wan would remain in exile to watch over the boy. Before his exile, Yoda taught him how to converse with his old master, a valuable skill Qui-Gon himself learned from one of the mysterious ancient Order of the Wills. Beginning his new life on Tatooine, Obi-Wan chose a suitable pseudonym, Ben, after a rock formation called Ben's Mesa near the market town of Bastine, not too far from where he set up his new homestead. Ben Kenobi would spend his days watching cautiously from afar as Luke grew up on the Lars homestead, learning the tricks of the trade of becoming a moisture farmer. He would also at times go into town, visit the marketplace, as well as the local watering holes, and it was there where he got his news of what was going on in the rest of the galaxy. The most important bit of news being his former apprentice was alive and currently terrorizing the galaxy as the Dark Lord Darth Vader. He also overheard in a conversation between spacers that Ferrus Olin, Ciri's former Padawan, was alive and on the run, and it was Qui-Gon's Force Ghost that convinced him to go and help Ferrus while he watched over Luke. Linking up with Ferrus on Balassa, Obi-Wan helped him escape from a young Boba Fett, as well as several Imperial Inquisitors, one of which was keen on finding out what happened to Padme on Polis Massa, but after being satisfied that the information about the twins' birth was safe and that Ferrus was in safe hands on Ilum, he returned to Tatooine. Ben Kenobi resumed his watch over the Lars homestead, and one day trouble came when a raiding party of Tuskens, led by a chieftain Kenobi knew all too well, the Tusken-raised human and former Jedi Master Asherad Het, arrived with the intention of killing the settlers and retaking the land. Kenobi intervened, and even the sight of a familiar face would not sway Het from his path of destruction, so they ignited their lightsabers and settled it the Force user's way, dueling until Kenobi cut off Het's arm, and even worse, unmasked him in front of his tribe, bringing great shame upon him. He stopped short of killing the fallen Jedi and bade him to leave Tatooine never to return, a decision that in hindsight may not have been a good idea, as it would have repercussions in later years. As Luke grew into adolescence, old Ben had to keep a keener eye on him, even having to save him and one of his friends from a crate dragon at one point, bringing him back to his irate uncle. Owen understood what Obi-Wan was trying to do, but he didn't much appreciate that he was trying to turn him onto the Jedi path. He thought that the safest life for his nephew was one of a quaint farmer, and because of this, Owen never talked highly of Ben to Luke and suggested he stay away. Not long before the Battle of Yavin, Luke and C-3PO were out in the Junlan Wastes in search for his new droid, R2-D2, who had gone looking for Obi-Wan, when he was ambushed by Tusken Raiders. Luckily for him, though, Ben came to the rescue, impersonating a crate dragon call to scare off the Tuskens. After recovering, Skywalker was brought back to Ben's home, where he told him mostly the truth about his father and presented him a gift, Anakin's lightsaber, before viewing a holo recording that R2 was urging to show him. The recording was of Princess Leia Organa, who pleaded to Obi-Wan Kenobi to take the plans to a secret battle station stowed away inside the droid to her father, Bail Organa on Alderaan, when she was unable to do so due to her ship coming under attack. Luke and Ben deduced that if the Imperials were looking for these plans, then that would lead them back to the Lars homestead. However, they weren't fast enough, and Luke found his aunt and uncle brutally murdered at the hands of the Empire. It was then that Luke agreed to go with Ben to Alderaan. Traveling to Mos Eisley Spaceport after evading stormtroopers and unruly cantina patrons, they found a pilot and a ship that could take them to Alderaan, and with stormtroopers in fast pursuit, they joined Corellian smuggler Han Solo and his Wookiee first mate Chewbacca in their YT-1300 Millennium Falcon. During the journey, Ben began teaching Luke the basics of building a connection with the Force, as well as a bit of lightsaber training. But upon exiting hyperspace, they made an alarming discovery. Alderaan wasn't there, just asteroid debris. Just then, the Falcon was caught in a tractor beam, and brought to the very moon-sized battle station that R2 was carrying the plans for, and while Luke and Han acquired some stormtrooper disguises, Ben was able to sneak aboard. While the others rescued Princess Leia from the Death Star's detention level, Kenobi located the tractor beam controls to their hangar and deactivated it. This would allow them to escape and continue their mission. However, he would not be joining them. Sensing that Obi-Wan was aboard, Vader approached his old master and engaged him one final time in a lightsaber duel, and their back and forth was enough to gather the interest of the stormtroopers in Docking Bay 327, allowing Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, and the droids a clear path to the Falcon. Seeing that Luke was home free, Obi-Wan raised his lightsaber and allowed Vader to strike him down, becoming, as Qui-Gon's spirit had taught him, one with the Force, so that only his Jedi robes and lightsaber remained. The loss of his mentor weighed heavy on the young Skywalker, but as it would be proven at the fateful Battle of Yavin, Obi-Wan would, in one form or another, always be with him. Always. Obi-Wan would continue to invisibly guide Luke during his blossoming career with the Rebel Alliance, even at one point offering him great assistance in his duel with Vader on Mimban 2 years after the Battle of Yavin. In 3 ABY, Obi-Wan finally appeared to Luke as a Force ghost, while Luke was lost on the frozen wastes of Hoth, bidding him to go to Dagobah to seek Yoda and complete his Jedi training. He would also appear to Luke on both of his visits to Dagobah to offer advice, answer questions, and issue dire warnings. Kenobi's ghost appeared to Luke a few more times, once at Endor after Vader was redeemed and the Emperor destroyed, another to help him find the lost city of the Jedi on Yavin 4, and one last time on Coruscant in 9 ABY, just before the Thrawn crisis began to plague the New Republic. In Ben's home on Tatooine, Luke found many useful pieces of information among his effects and journals, such as how to build a lightsaber and other things that aided Luke in rebuilding the Jedi Order. As for his lightsaber, that was stowed away as a trophy in Vader's castle on Vajun, until it was later recovered by a dark side cultist and then Anakin Solo, one of Han and Leia's sons and his fellow Jedi trainees. The New Republic and later Galactic Alliance would also name ships after him, most notably the Nebula-class Star Destroyer Obi-Wan. However, his most impactful legacy was when Luke named his son Ben after him, who grew up to be a great Jedi in his own right. This ends my findings on Obi-Wan Kenobi. If you have any suggestions for future transmissions, don't be afraid to drop a comment. Special thanks to my patrons, Wildcat144, Zexend, JTribs1997, Wirefox Terrier, AJ Can't Think of a Good Pun Right Now, Dave the Grave, Zim the Despot, Matt Patton, Hawk2274, Cal Scarata, Angry Mutt, Chris Evans, Mayo4, and Epileptic Zebra. If you'd like to support this channel and perhaps even commission your own video topic, please visit my Patreon to find out how. Link is in the description. In the meantime, keep your comm channels open for future transmissions, and don't forget to subscribe. Tad Larkin, out.